glorious orbital dice is one of Dreamland's polygods, alongside Triangulus the Foul, Oro the Eversphere, and Pentacles the Putrid. The dice is the god of necromancy, a word associated with a variety of different practices, rituals, and beliefs. Traditionally, necromancy referred to the practice of communicating with the dead, but for the glorious orbital dice and his followers, it means something more along the lines of making the dead walk again. In other words, the dice is the god of corpse resurrection, and his most devoted followers are members of the cult of the Withered Root, who live in the ancient caverns of Mount Dice, where they perform their necromancy rituals in order to appease the great polygod. And the leader of the cult of the Withered Root is the necromancer of Mount Dice. He was also the author of the doctrine of the Great Cube, which is widely regarded as the canonical scripture on necromancy and worship of the glorious orbital dice.
The necromancer of Mount Dice is the conduit of the cult of the Withered Root. The cult calls Mount Dice their home, and they worship the great polygod of necromancy, the glorious Orbital Dice.
But in Dreamland, necromancy is strictly prohibited by Oro the Eversphere, who is the god of law and order. And the Golem brothers work for Oro the Eversphere, and their job is to enforce this prohibition against necromancy.
Who are the Golem brothers? They serve Oro the Eversphere, and their duty is to outlaw necromancy wherever it is found. The brothers believe that death must be final. For this reason, they are enemies of the cult of the Withered Root, whose members draw upon the power of the glorious orbital dice to raise the dead. But for what purpose?
And the Golem brothers travel all over Dreamland in order to investigate those who are suspected of practicing necromancy. Recently, a sub-faction of the cult of the Withered Root has appeared in the small town of Stillwater Creek. And while these are currently just rumours, several residents have disappeared without explanation. And locals have reported seeing unfamiliar figures moving through the town late at night, often heading to an abandoned house on the outskirts of the creek. One witness claims to have seen 3 men together in the early hours before dawn, carrying what was described as a suspiciously shaped bag into the rear of the property. The witness couldn't confirm what was inside the bag, only that the 3 men were moving with an unusual sense of urgency. While these accounts remain unverified, they've fostered speculation that the cult of the Withered Root could be operating in the small town. But whether the Stillwater necromancers are formally connected to the cult or simply inspired by its teachings remains unclear. The strongest evidence emerged during a search conducted by the Golem brothers at the residence of an individual believed to be a practitioner of necromancy. And the Golem brothers discovered a small compartment hidden in the locked drawer of a desk. And concealed in that compartment was a book, a worn but carefully preserved copy of the doctrine of the Great Cube. Now, possession of this book alone isn't proof of wrongdoing by any means, but it does suggest that interest in necromancy and worship of the glorious orbital dice has spread beyond the caverns of Mount Dice and into wider society. What this will ultimately lead to remains unclear, but it will fall to Oro the Eversphere and the Golem brothers to take whatever measures might be necessary in order to eliminate the practice of raising the dead for the purpose of pleasing a god.